famous for being the first of their kind. Whether or not they were intended to represent the Pythagorean right triangle, a favorite symbol among Masons, is for the viewer to decide.
Rorik's idea was to have that Mason symbol put on the dollar bill, so every resident in the U.S. is connected to Rorik through the dollar bill.
While we were there, Mildred confirmed that Rorik's chief financial supporter, Louis Horch, was in fact a 33rd degree Freemason.
And that was given, sent to me by Oriole. Her father was Louis Horch, and she and her mother, Nettie Horch, were very involved with the museum. And during this time, they were caught up in the mysticism of Rorik.
And those who were part of Rorik's inner circle were invited to the highest level. With Mildred's help, we were able to make our way up the elevators and then the many stairs to the much talked about penthouse, which some have called a kind of temple or meditation room.
There, is that where they had their meditation?
No, meditation was right back of you. We had that apartment, and it was...
Behind this green door may well have been the place where Nicholas Rorik met with men like Manly Hall, Henry Wallace, and countless others to discuss America's secret destiny and quite probably the occult design of the Great Seal. The penthouse is currently used as an apartment, and we were unable to see inside of it. But we followed Buff Perry onto the roof to get a look at the architecture from the exterior.
We're at the very top of the master building, and behind you is the river, and in front of you is the outside walling of the meditation room or temple or whatever one wants to call it, the chapel that Rorik had constructed for his private spiritual purposes.
So it's right on the other side of this wall.
Yeah, it's all this in here. And that's the very top.
The staggered layers at the top of the penthouse seem to bear some resemblance to one of Rorik's paintings titled Arhat. In Buddhism, Arhat is the highest level of enlightenment, said to be the ultimate goal of nirvana. In Rorik's painting, notice the image of the Buddhist figure sitting inside the staggered stones, perhaps a symbol for the enlightened esoteric elite in the meditation room. The master building rooftop is undoubtedly interesting, especially since it overlooks the Cathedral Church of St. John the Divine, the largest cathedral in the world, where many of the occult concepts of America all seem to come together. What's interesting is that much of the cathedral was being built during FDR's administration. On the outside there is a cross before what is called the Rose Window, an obvious symbol of Rosicrucianism. Inside the cathedral, we find praying saints alongside lurking demons. An image of what looks like a Zoroastrian Maitreya hangs upon a cross at the altar. Meanwhile, an upside-down cross is seen in one of the alcoves, serving as a monument to September 11th. Elsewhere, a phoenix bird is carved beneath the pulpit. A carving of George Washington is found next to that of William Shakespeare. And on the floor is the seal of St. Albans. St. Albans was one of the names given to Sir Francis Bacon. And in the midst of it, we find obvious imagery pertaining to the Holy Grail. Some more obvious than others, like this seal on the floor of the cathedral. But notice that there are two cups beneath the cross. Could this be suggestive of the two grail concept put forth by Wolfram von Eschenbach and others, who believe that the grail is both the cup of Christ and the stone of destiny? It is worth noting that grail legends were of great importance during the time of FDR and the whole World War II generation. Not only in America, but in Europe, Richard Wagner based his famous opera, Parsifal, on the writings of Wolfram von Eschenbach. This opera would become a central focus for Adolf Hitler, and as a result, there are some who have argued that Hitler's whole life was dedicated to the Holy Grail. Occult historian Tracy Twyman writes of what Hitler and other occultists believed about the Grail, that it dates long before the time of Christ, all the way back to ancient Atlantis. She writes that just as Hermes possessed a magic stone, which has been associated with the Holy Grail, Hercules also possessed a heavenly stone and a special cup that he carried it in. According to Plato's dialogue, the pillars of Hercules were the gateway to Atlantis. This may be why Sir Francis Bacon used these same pillars as a symbol for achieving greater knowledge. Oddly enough, about the same time the Masons were finishing the work on the master building. Nicholas Roerich finished this painting titled The Last of Atlantis. Which brings us back to the greater mystery of the Roerich building and what may be the secret key to understanding the dollar bill. But first, how did the Stone of Destiny come into the possession of Nicholas Roerich?
The receiving of this stone in the Rothenburg casket was very mysterious. Nobody's completely certain who sent it to him, but he and his wife Helena were in Paris in 1923 in an exquisite suite when all of a sudden this was delivered. And it was delivered in this box, and the box says Cinq Place Vendôme, and that's 5 Vendôme Place, which was where they were staying, and it was sent from Bankers Trust, from M.M., and it's addressed to Madame and Monsieur N. Roerich. And after many years, this is what has come of the Rothenburg casket that was in this pine wood box.
But why would this artifact have been delivered to Nicholas Roerich? And could it have really ended up inside the cornerstone of the master building, as Buff Perry and others believe?
When it was mysteriously delivered to Nicholas Roerich in 1923, he carries it around. He ends up going to India with it. By 1929, he's had this huge building, a 29-story Art Deco building built for him in New York City by Louis Horch, an investment banker, with a cornerstone prepared to have this sacred casket bearing the stone and other artifacts sent from India, because he's now taking it in 1923 from Paris to India, and placed in the cornerstone for posterity.
All of this might seem a bit too incredible, except for the fact that the laying of the cornerstone for the master building was a major event in 1929, attended by foreign dignitaries from around the world. from Spain, France, Poland, Australia, Romania, and a host of other countries. Why would they all turn out for this event?
This 1929 event is very important. Albert Einstein sent a tribute, which I have a copy of, to the construction of the building, to the meaning of Nicholas Roerich, who he was, what he was doing for humanity, and why the laying of this cornerstone was so important. Rabindranath Tagore, many luminaries and notables, government officials and the like, including Henry Wallace, who became FDR's vice president, first Secretary of Agriculture and then vice president in the next decade. And that becomes very intriguing, what all the connectedness is in terms of FDR, Freemasonry, and the stone.
Just as Freemasons were involved with the designing of the dollar bill, they were also involved in the construction of the Master Building. As noted earlier, the Master Building was financed by Louis Horch, who was appointed to a number of government offices during FDR's administration. In fact, he was placed in charge of the Department of Commerce by his fellow Freemason and Roerich disciple, Henry Wallace. As we have seen, Wallace, in his letters, shared a fascination with the Stone of Destiny.
And so the stone today is in this building?
The stone is in this casket, said to be in this casket. The reports I have received from the Roerich Museum would have that stone in this Rajput casket in the cornerstone of the Master Building.
The interest of men like Albert Einstein, Henry Wallace, and not to mention all the foreign dignitaries, becomes quite intriguing when one considers the full contents of the casket that was said to be placed inside the cornerstone.
I'm familiar with the ingredients of the Rajput casket by having read letters from Zina Fosdick and her own notebook entries, and also because Aida Tolskaya herself, one of the co-curators of the Roerich Museum, wrote out what Zina Fosdick had stated they had placed in the Rajput casket in Darjeeling before it was delivered to the city of New York to be placed in the cornerstone.
As Buff Perry explained, the letter that describes the contents of the casket comes from Zina Fosdick, a longtime devoted disciple of Nicholas Roerich, who would later become the director of the Roerich Museum. The museum photo collection is filled with images of Fosdick alongside Roerich while they were in Darjeeling, India, where the casket was prepared. As such, it stands to reason that she would have known the details of what they put inside.
The letter's written by Zina Fosdick, and it was actually an entry in her diary. And what's written here is an accounting of all of the ingredients that are in the Rajput casket that was prepared in Darjeeling, India, in 1928 to be delivered to New York, to Manhattan, and to be placed in the cornerstone of the Master Building. There are a lot of interesting things that were placed in the Rajput casket. For example, an image of Maitreya printed on Tibetan paper.
As we showed earlier, in the occult belief, the Maitreya is said to be the last Messiah that will come.
The Maitreya is seen as the final deliverer and incarnation in the Buddhist tradition. Again, he's also Kalki in the Hindu tradition, the 10th incarnation of Vishnu. Vishnu is the great god of Hinduism. So they're not mixing up Jesus with Maitreya, but they are seeing Maitreya